What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. One main topic for you today, I want to go over the 5 things that could potentially derail the Packers in the playoffs. And I know what you are thinking. Andy, it is Friday. We are, a day away from playoff football. The Packers don't play for another week. We've had a really tough week already. Do we really need to go over 5 things that could derail the Packers season? I get it. And you guys know me. I like to lean positive. And let me start by saying, I think all of these things are things that the Packers can overcome. And I really like this Packers team and their chances come playoffs and hopefully Super Bowl. But I do think that at some point, as I've mentioned, Green Bay is going to have to overcome some things, right? It's not going to just be winning the division round easy, winning the championship round easy, winning the Super Bowl easy. They're not just going to go 3-0 and, no sweat. They take care of business. If they do, I will do something. I don't care what, you guys can decide what my punishment is. I will gladly take it as the Packers, waltz through the playoffs in Super Bowl and hoist the Lombardi trophy. I will be very glad to eat as much crow as needed in that situation. But I think we all know that's likely not going to be the case. So what are the things that other teams can put pressure on the Packers with? Or what are the things that could derail the Packers this postseason? I think as a fan, I always want to know what the pressure points are. What are those things that they're going to have to overcome? So I'm going to hit on those things today. Again, I want to mention I think Green Bay has the ability to overcome all 5 of these things, but I think all of them are important to go over. So let's start with number 1, and that's the mismatches on the inside of the Packers defense. And I think actually Mike Pettin and the Packers have done a really, really nice job in mitigating some of these issues. You go back earlier this season, and there were times where, when Green Bay was in some of their nickel and dime defenses, it might have been Christian Kirksey and Kamal Martin or Chris Barnes with, let's say, Chandon Sullivan as the nickel corner with their safeties back deep, their corners off to the side. And teams were really taking advantage of Sullivan, Kirksey, Kamal Martin or Chris Barnes on the inside in some of those mismatches. And then when they would go nickel, it would still be Sullivan, maybe Raven Green or Will Redmond in that position. And then they would also go, it was Christian Kirksey before Chris Barnes started playing well. And you just had all of these mismatches. When it was Kirksey and let's just say Will Redmond and Chandon Sullivan, you could attack the middle of the field with regularity and have a lot of success doing so. So what did they do? Well, Raven Green went out for the season, or at least up to this point, he hasn't played since his injury. They've moved Adrian Amos into that box safety role, making Will Redmond or Vernon Scott sometimes play that true safety alongside Darnell Savage. They've also used Darnell Savage more as a robber. We've also seen Christian Kirksey be mitigated to more of a base defense and maybe some heavy nickel, but he's more in on some of the early rundowns, same with Kamal Martin. And Chris Barnes has really taken that lead linebacker position. And now, for the most part, you're looking at Chris Barnes, Adrian Amos, and Chandon Sullivan as those 3 that are kind of patrolling the middle in those nickel and dime situations, which is it may not sound like much, but it's a big step up from before when it was Kirksey and maybe even a Raven Green or a Will Redmond in those situations. Now, Sullivan can still get beat. Barnes can still get beat from time to time, but it's been much more consistent since they've made those changes. And with Darnell Savage lurking in that robber role, you have to really be cognizant of him as well. They're making you attack on the outsides against King and Alexander rather than attacking one of those weaknesses in the middle. And they're really playing the strength of the defense, Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage, to take away a lot of that middle of the field. So what's the worry then? Well, base downs, early downs, right? I just mentioned Christian Kirksey, Chris Barnes, Kamal Martin. We're seeing more of them in some of the base defense. Chandon Sullivan still in that slot. And in some of those early down situations, my expectation is it's still going to be Sullivan in the slot, Chris Barnes and Christian Kirksey at that linebacker position. And my fear is teams against, let's say, the New Orleans Saints, right? Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders could be the 3 that are kind of in the slot or, in the backfield attacking the middle of the field. And if you get some of those mismatches on early downs with Sanders and Cook and Kamara in the middle of the field, attacking Kirksey, Chris Barnes, and Chandon Sullivan, that still has the ability to be a major mismatch, especially if they get Green Bay caught in man defense. And Sean Payton is just the offensive mind to get Green Bay and Mike Pettin and their defense into some of those mismatches and attack them, especially with Drew Brees back at quarterback. He's not going to want to, spend a lot of time throwing deep. He wants some of those checkdowns. He wants some of that intermediate stuff. He wants to work the middle of the field. So that's going to be something that Green Bay has to be cognizant of. But at the same time, if they go light, then Alvin Kamara and that running game is going to attack them. Well, Taysom Hill, and they'll do a variety of different things, and they'll attack aggressively in that way. So that's just one team. I think the Rams, should they match up with the Rams? Cooper Kupp, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, that entire group inside. They're starting to get healthy. They can attack with their running backs as well. So that's another team with Sean McVay that is going to attack some of those mismatches in the middle of the field. So Green Bay is going to have to be cognizant of who's on the field for the Rams and how to make sure that Christian Kirksey and Shannon Sullivan and Chris Barnes and Will Redmond, if he gets in, and some of those guys in the middle of the field aren't getting mismatches that are completely disadvantageous to the Packers, and keep using Adrian Amos in some of those roles and keep attacking with Darnell Savage to cut off some of those things. But it is definitely something that Green Bay, at minimum, is going to have to be aware of and probably overcome at some point in the playoffs. Number 2, this is the least surprising one on this list, is special teams. And the Green Bay Packers in 2020 have basically had enough errors for about 2 to 3 seasons, right? The kick return fumble by Darius Shepard, the punt return fumble by Tavon Austin, 3 missed extra points, a blocked punt, 2 punt returns for touchdowns, numerous penalties, numerous times stopped within your own 20-yard line, poor coverage on punts, poor coverage on kicks, not getting the ball out past the 25 as a kick returner, just all of it. Outside of Mason Crosby kicking field goals, which has been chef kiss, everything else a bit of a nightmare. And again, I'm not asking for Green Bay to be spectacular. I'm not asking for your Desmond Howard kick return for a touchdown, anything like that. They just need to be competent, and they have not been for a large chunk of this season. So they don't have really a kick returner. I don't know how creative you can get there. I don't know, in a playoff game, do you want to put like an Aaron Jones back there, knowing that you've got some depth at running back and knowing that it's win or go home? Do you want to be more creative? I don't know anyone outside of that even would scare anyone, period. But, right now they're not getting the ball past the 25, and teams are specifically kicking to them, knowing that they can pin it within the 25-yard line. We've also seen fumbles in those situations in the past, not with Malik Taylor, but still there's a level of concern anytime Green Bay is on special teams. As a punt returner, they need to figure out a way to get more from Tavon Austin, specifically not fumbling the ball. It was a one-time occurrence, but it's not like he's had a ton of opportunities. And they need to get running lanes for him. They haven't been able to do that. They need to make sure that they're protecting J.K. Scott. There have been way too many punts that have been, the one that was blocked and a handful that have been very close to being blocked. And then he needs to be much more consistent. He has been very Jekyll and Hyde throughout the course of this season. You can't allow punt returns for touchdowns, which has happened twice. You can't have missed extra points. You can't have missed field goals, which I know hasn't happened, but all of it's in play here. It's a new season come postseason, and this special teams has to just find a way to be competent and make sure that this game comes down, every game comes down to offense and defense, and they get out of the game without being a major factor in the game. And anything they can provide is above and beyond that is a bonus, but I wouldn't expect that. So the worst thing that you want is an NFC championship game or a Super Bowl decided because of a special teams blunder. We've been there. We hated it. We don't want to be there again. So they have to make sure that they're stepping up and playing their A game, or that is a major weakness that, again, Green Bay is going to have to overcome in the playoffs. Number 3 is the lulls. And we have seen now for 2 years that this team, whether it can be for a full game, it can be for a full quarter, it can be for a half. We've seen them just, for a team that likes to push that they're all gas and no brake, they seem to at least be an idle. Maybe they're not braking, but they're idling at best at times. And that has been an issue at times. And this is not a 1 or 2 or 3 game occurrence over the last couple of years. Hell, they did it in the NFC Championship game a season ago where they came out basically asleep at the wheel. So this has got to be something where they come, they're playing at home, a Super Bowl is on the line, they have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Take advantage of this. No lulls, no excuses, all gas, no effing break. This is the time. The time is now. In the late great words of Kevin Green, it is time. You cannot have those lulls. And I think Green Bay is just going to have to be cognizant of that, and their leaders really have to step up and make sure that this team is playing with energy and passion and focus for hopefully 3 more games this season. Number 4, David Bakhtiari and the loss of him and really just kind of the overall setup of this offensive line. I have zero concerns that Green Bay can set up their offensive line to be successful within the normal flow of their offense and not have to change their offense and be successful. To a large extent, we saw that against the Chicago Bears. They didn't protect very well in that game. You go back and look, and that, Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, there were some easy wins for those guys one-on-one against Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick, and the rest of that offensive line. But Aaron Rodgers got rid of the ball so quickly, and Aaron Jones was so elusive, and Davante Adams got open so quickly that a lot of times it didn't matter. And still for the majority of the game, because the defense has to keep focus on everything, the jet motions, the play actions, the bootlegs, just all of it, right? It's all eye candy. Everyone's thinking on defense, and the Packers have the ability to run the offense the way that they want. And I think Billy Turner, Rick Wagner, Lucas Patrick, Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, all more than capable of running that offense. However, my concern is at some point, I feel, hopefully I'm wrong, happy to be wrong, that Green Bay is probably going to be down at some point. Probably late in the game, maybe fourth quarter, maybe second half, and Green Bay is going to have to throw to get back in the game, and that's not the worst thing in the world, right? You've got Aaron Rodgers, and that's a good thing. But even against Tampa Bay, which that game mostly was a result of two bizarro interceptions that normally don't happen, but in that game, once they got down, and you go 3-4 wide receivers and you have to throw yourself back in the game, and there's no more eye candy, there's no more motion, there's no more play action. It's just wide receivers getting open on the outside, teams taking away Davante Adams and teeing off on Billy Turner at left tackle, Lucas Patrick at guard, Rick Wagner at right tackle. Can they hold up against teams like Washington with Montez Sweat and Chase Young? Maybe it's the Rams with Aaron Donald and Dante Fowler. Maybe it's the Saints with, Cameron Jordan, Trey Hendrickson, who's had a really nice year. The Bears with Khalil Mack and, Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks, which we just saw. The Buccaneers, Shaq Barrett, that entire defensive group. They gave Jason Pierre-Paul, they gave the Packers fits when they played them last. If you're down and you got to throw your way out of it, and they take away Adams, and some of the, and the easy throws aren't there, and there's no play action, there's no jet motion, and those guys just have to protect. Can they live up to the expectations of what this offense has been able to do all year? That's a major concern that I have, and something, again, that Green Bay is going to have to overcome, likely at some point in the playoffs. Last but not least, maybe a cop-out here, but you still have to avoid COVID. It is this ugly cloud that hangs over everything, and it certainly can hang over the Packers this season as well. And the last thing that you want is to have a situation or scenario where you're going into an NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you're without a Davante Adams, a Jair Alexander, and Aaron Rodgers, heaven forbid, you name it, Aaron Jones, Kenny Clark, any of it. I don't even care if it's a Chris Barnes. I don't care who the heck it is. If it's any of those guys, that's going to be an issue that, they have to overcome. So in the immortal words of Davante Adams, wash your hands, wash your butts, do whatever the hell you need to do, but make sure that you don't have something COVID related like the Cleveland Browns are going through right now that would potentially be a dagger in your season at the worst possible moment. So those are the 5 things that Green Bay has to be cognizant of and overcome if ultimately they want to be Super Bowl champions. And again, the best news is I think Green Bay has the personnel, the coaching, the safety measures, all of it to overcome all of the things that I just mentioned. I am very bullish on the Packers' chances this season. I'm going out on a limb now. Whoever they face in the divisional round, they're going to win that game. I truly believe that. I think it's going to come down to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl as to whether or not that they want, they ultimately hoist another Lombardi trophy. But again, I like their chances, and I think these are all things that the Packers can overcome through the remainder of this season. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Again, this was not meant to be a Debbie Downer episode. It's simply meant to be realistic and focus on some of the things that could derail the Packers and that Green Bay is ultimately going to have to overcome. I'll be back here tomorrow. As always, I'm probably going to be breaking down some of the playoff games. You can, of course, join us on the Pack-A-Day podcast on the audio version. Andrew and Kyle always do a great job. They're going to be taking on today's episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can, again, follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.